we're gonna take some electrical tape, and they sell something called fork seal bullet for this part. And basically when you put the seal back on, you don't want it to get cut by the metal. So I'm just gonna put electrical tape on instead. Cheaper, and it'll protect the seal. And it's available everywhere. So when we slide the seal over here, we don't want it to cut. And I don't like using the other, I don't like going the other route. It's just how I am. So we're just going to put it a little bit overlapping. Just go all the way around. You don't need a lot. That's probably good right there. And just fold this over. That's probably all we need right there. So, on the bottom here, we're going to put our first bushing on. So we're going to slide this over. Probably going to use the help of our... Oh, there we go. Yep. So we got that back on. So with that bushing put on, just the first one, the one that clips in that recess down here, we have nothing in this tube. We're just going to set this down. After you set it down straight, slides down nice and smooth. We're going to take our other one, slide it over the top, and we're going to let that roll down. There's a little recess down here for it to sit in. And I'm going to take this little spacer washer and set that on top. And I have this incredibly technical device called PVC tubing. All I'm going to do is put this over the whole tube and slam this down inside. And you're going to slam this down. You'll see a little recess in here that's supposed to go in. So go ahead and just slam this down. Just make sure you use some force to get it down where it's supposed to. Alright, I'm just going to move it a little bit just to see where it's at. Get this washer out of the way. So we still have some room to go. So we just keep on hammering away. I think that just bottomed out. So let's see. And you'll see the recess that it's supposed to go in. It'll be almost flush. And that's good. So we got this washer still. Make sure you don't have anything in there. Set that there. Alright, now that we got that, we're going to be good to set up the next part. Go ahead and hold that. So I got the new seal. And to help it slide, we're just going to get a little bit of grease and put it on the inside of that seal. All on the inside. Now, looking at this fork tube, just make sure there's nothing like any giant pitting or anything, super deep scratches, cuts, burrs, anything like that, because we're going to slide this down. And we don't want the inside of this getting cut at all. So this is the reason why we have the electrical tape on the top, to help protect this seal going over. So we're going to slide this over. Just be really careful. Should be real nice and smooth. Go ahead and just slide that down. It'll slide right into place just like that. Now this is where the old seal comes in handy. We're going to take this old seal, the one that we cut, and we're going to slide this over right on top of our new seal. And this is going to act as a buffer. Just make sure it gets in there. And we're going to take a good old nasty little thing right here, and we're going to drive this in. Same way we did with the last one. Go ahead and drive it in. Don't be too aggressive. You want to make sure you're trying to make sure it goes in pretty evenly. Alright, so I think it might have gone in, so now to get the seal out that you put in there, find where you cut it. Use a pick or something like that. I'm just going to pry up. Yet again, be sure not to scratch the tube. When you just pry up, it'll just slide right out just like that. Now, when you're looking down to see if it's where it's supposed to be, there's going to be a little groove for that C-clip to fit. So this is good now. We don't need that anymore. So I can see my groove. So we're going to take the C-clip and slide it over top. And then you put it in whichever way you see fit. I like to do the back end first and just make sure it gets fully seated in that groove. If you have a friend helping or a pick or anything like that, it's always nice. So I'm going to get this in. Make sure while you're doing this you don't pierce the seal underneath. You'll hear it click in place. And go ahead and all the way around, push it down. Make sure it's fully seated. And that's good. Now the last part, we're going to get our oil seal. Just going to make sure that that's clean. I think I forgot to clean that one. Not the oil seal, my bad. It's going to be the dust seal, dust cover. Throw that on top, set it down. This one you don't have to force in, just make sure it's nice and flush around. And that's your seal swap. Now, in order for us to fill this up with the proper amount of oil, we actually have to have the damper assembly inside. So, let me see if I can find it really quick. So if I remember right, this is the damper. And there's a spring. The spring goes inside that damper. Just like that. We're going to drop this down and we're going to put that bolt back inside on the bottom. So just slide it on top. And we're going to take this electrical tape off because we don't need it anymore. And then we're going to put that bolt in. So now we're going to put this bolt inside there. When we try and thread this bolt in, the damper assembly we just put in here is going to start spinning along with it. So in order to keep it in place, just take something, a stick, piece of wood, preferably not a piece of wood, I'm just kidding, but something that's not going to leave anything, residue or anything in there. I'm just going to use this breaker bar I have. We're just going to put it down on the other side of the tube just to hold it in place. And we're not going to apply a whole bunch of force. We just want to get this tight enough to when we fill this with oil, we're not going to get an oil leak. So I'm going to hand this over to Batman. I'm going to bring this inside the other side and have him start threading through. If you feel any resistance, then stop and start over. You don't want to cross thread this. Alright, hold up.
Nice and snug.
Real snug, real snug. You don't want any oil leaking. Got it? Alright. So that's the only reason I needed the breaker bar. And that's out of the way now. Ensure that you have full travel after tightening that. Sometimes if you didn't assemble it properly, you won't be able to. Next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to fill this up with the proper amount of oil. That's where this specialty tool comes in, made by Motion Pro. You want to go ahead and show it, Batman? This is Motion Pro's fork oil level tool. And on this shaft right here, there is numbers telling you from the bottom up to wherever this is set, how many millimeters of an air gap there is. Most service manuals have a specification for how much oil goes in here, what weight the oil that goes in here, and the air gap from the top of the oil to the top of the fork, what that gap is supposed to be. For this particular bike, it's 111 millimeters from the top. This one's already been preset for the right amount, so now we're just going to fill it up with oil more than what we think belongs in here. This one calls for Honda SS-8. We're going to use equivalent 10 weight fork oil. So go ahead and fill it up probably halfway or so. Now you're going to have trapped air bubbles in here, so you're going to go ahead and slide this up and down real slow. So get rid of the air bubbles, and if you look down while you're doing this, you'll see a couple of air bubbles pop up. Check underneath your fork to make sure you're not going to have any leakage from that bolt we put in down there. So you go ahead and just pump it probably 10, 15 times. Okay, we did a few pumps. Now I think we got all the air out. So we're going to use this oil level tool. We have it set to 111 millimeters. Go ahead and set that in. We're going to make sure that this cap right here is flush with the top, and the fork is fully compressed without the spring, only the damper rod assembly, and we have everything vertical. Once you have that set, you're going to go ahead and start sucking the extra fluid out until you hear air bubbles. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and dump that in here so we can reuse it. Go ahead. So that sound tells us we have the correct oil level. Alright, this tool's done its job. Alright, the other thing we have to do, this spring has a resting length that it has to be. I believe the spec was 327 millimeters. And this one, like the other one we've already measured, just from end to end, free, as in no load, no weight, and it's within spec at 330 millimeters. So this one's still good. As we remember, when we took it out, we have the tightly coiled end on the top, loosely coiled on the bottom. So we're going to go ahead and dump that in. Next thing that went in was the spacer. Just throw that in there. That's not going to go anywhere. Now we have this giant spacer. So we're going to throw that in. And then you're going to have to fully lift up. You're going to have a little bit of space up here. This is where I think you have the fork cap on your side. Thank you. So make sure that you have an O-ring around this that is not punctured. Make sure the threads are in good condition. We're going to set this on top. You have to force this down and you have to catch the threads. So be careful when you do this, because you're going to be putting that spring under a lot of pressure. So when you do this, you're going to compress it and you're going to try and twist it. Remember, don't cross thread. If you're getting a lot of resistance, then stop and start over. So we finally got this on a few threads. Make sure that it spins pretty freely. There is a torque spec for this, but trust me, it is a pain to do unless you have soft grip, these soft grip clamps to hold it in place. So I'm going to use this impact. I'm going to set it to low power. I'm not going to wrench on this at all. I'm not going to hold this button down. But you just want it to be where that lip meets it, and then just stop right there. You don't want to. These are fine threads, so you don't want to put too much torque on these. Right there. It just hit. That's all we need. And there's too much spring tension under here. That thing's not going to move. Trust me. And now we have a good little fork right there. So we're just going to reverse everything we just did, and we're going to put it back up on the bike. Alright. We're we're just going to reverse the process. We're going to put this fork leg back up through here. And we're going to make sure we get our turn signal right there and we get it all put together. I'm going to use my friend Batman to help put this up here, hold it in place. Just go ahead and swivel it, couple up and down. Make sure that's right there. Alright. Okay. So now I'm going to lightly seat this bottom bolt. I'm not going to tighten this down completely. Probably good. Before you tighten any of these bolts, pay attention to how high and how low this is right here. You'll see that there's a line where the fork cap is. You want, in many situations, for that line to be right level with the surface of the top yoke. Once it's perfectly level, you can go ahead and tighten these down so they don't move. Tighten this down a little bit. Just to hold it in place. We're not wrenching on this. I'm not going to hang on it. Just to hold it in place. Now, you want to make sure that exactly how much this is raised off the center, off of the yoke, the other side matches this, to make sure that your forks are perfectly, I guess you could say the amount out, they're exactly the same. All right, and then now that this one seems to be pretty good where it's at, I'm going to start torquing things down. So I'm using my torque wrench to make sure I get the accurate measurement. The service manual calls for this
192 inch-pounds.
That's the bottom one. The top one is going to be 96 inch-pounds. It's not a whole lot. You want to make sure you get this torque right and you don't get it too tight, otherwise you could split it right here because of too much torque and you can strip out those threads. Because this is aluminum, so real light, right there. Now we're going to get the bottom bolt, which is, I forgot, Batman, how much is it?
196 inch-pounds.
So 196 inch-pounds. I think you meant to say 192 inch-pounds. Alright, getting close. 192 inch-pounds.
I blame Alfred.
Yeah, Alfred keeps screwing things up all the time. Alright, just gonna wrench on that. Right there. And I'm just gonna... there's no torque spec for that one. This is an aftermarket, I believe. I think, maybe not. I'm just gonna tighten that down by hand. I don't need torque spec for that. Just make sure that it's angled properly. Over there. Seems to be pretty good. Alright, so everything I just did right here, you do the exact same thing on the other side. I'll take care of that right now. And that's it. That's all I need. So that's it while I twist. Alright. What is the torque spec for the front axle?
192 inch-pounds.
Not the pinch bolts.
54 foot-pounds.
Alright. Alright. Hold this, make sure it doesn't fall. Alright. Make sure you torque the front axle first so that the fork legs can move and then torque down the pinch bolts. So now, what is the torque for the front fork pinch bolts or front axle pinch bolts?
192 foot-pounds.
192 inch-pounds?
Yes.
I feel like I should double check your work. Alright. Front axle pinch bolt, 192 inch-pounds.
Alfred's never wrong.
Alright. Be very careful not to over torque these. If these get over torqued, you can crack the fork leg right here and strip out the threads inside, and that's not fun for anybody. I had a bike that had this on both sides. And tighten the front axle, and then you're going to torque these down on both sides. It's important to make sure that you torque these both down equally at the same time. You don't want to have unequal pressure on one. Otherwise you can crack your fork, you can warp the metal, strip the threads, a whole bunch of things. So right now I'm getting them both snug. So right about there. And try your best to make sure that they stay matching. Even now that I'm going for the torque wrench, I'm going to torque this down just a little bit, switch over to the other one. Move over to the other one. Just go back and forth. You tighten one, and the other one's going to loosen. Alright, that's one. That's two. And then go ahead and double check, because like I said, you tighten one, the other one loosens. That's good. And we'll do it one more time. Alright. We're going to put this caliper back on. I've already taken this apart, serviced it. These slide pins right here were a little loose, or a little tight, so I went in, looped them up, and I did a few other things in here. This is another video I'll show you, probably the next video maybe. You're going to make sure that this gap between the brake pads is big enough to fit the rotor. If not, you're going to have to push these two pistons back in, and then you're going to slide this over. Alright. Now we're going to put our mounting bolts in. Thank you. I'm not going to tighten these down just yet. These have torque spec as well. It was 22 foot-pounds. Front brake caliper bolts, 22 foot-pounds. We're going to torque these down. There's no need for Loctite or anything like that. As long as you torque them down to spec, you don't have to worry about them. I've never had a problem with these. Make sure this bike stays where it's supposed to. Alright. Whenever you're using a torque wrench, make sure you hold the handle. You don't hold up here or up here. You can throw the torque off. Alright. We're going to go back and forth and make sure this is even. Alright. That works. Alright, cool. Alright, make sure you pump your front brake. Push those pistons back out where they're supposed to. And keep pumping until you get a firm pedal, or a firm lever. But I'm going to get this right here. So that's it. I hope you guys liked it. Hope it was informative. We got brand new forks on here now. Batman, you have anything to say?
I'm Batman.
That's what I thought. Well, get a hold of me through Facebook, Instagram, or just YouTube. If you got any questions, requests, put it down in the comments. I'll have all my handles in the description. And hope to see you again. Have a good day.